So I'm going to continue with collapse, and in this one we're going to talk about making a disaster bag. Sometimes people call them go bags. There's a bunch of different versions. This is all going to be about being more resilient, because chances are there's going to be less involvement from the government to help you get ready for disasters and help you recover from disasters. So you need to be ready to take care of yourself, basically. The first thing you want to do, if you've never done any of this, if you've never had to either think about it, or you have and you realized how bad it is when you don't have a plan, first thing you want to do is decide what you're preparing for. You have to take into account your regional area. And for example, I live in Seattle, so I have to think about things like an earthquake / tsunami, and it's gonna depend on where you are in the circumstances, whether you're going to stay put or you're gonna want to flee. Obviously, if you're in a tsunami area, your options are you need to get out as soon as possible. But all of these scenarios are going to come with different ways to react to them. If one of the mountains erupts around the area, you would obviously have to most likely stay put for that. Fires are fairly common. We do get windstorms, maybe once in a generation, but I remember people talking about the Columbus Day wind event when I was younger. Very similar to a hurricane, not as wide-ranging and whatnot, but it's going to depend very much where you live as to what you're getting ready for. And also you want to take into account places you spend time. So if you spend a lot of time at, say, some family's residence that is in another area, you may want to think about that. So what we're getting ready for this is, if you need to evacuate, you want to be able to have some of those things that you're going to need ready to go, so you can just grab a bag. Another thing to consider is people are in your group, and for example, your family. If you have kids, you're going to want a pack for each person generally. Then start thinking about, like, if you're getting ready with neighbors or whatnot, like if you have a local group that you're trying to help. So first thing first, get a backpack or something similar for each person. Then start with making a checklist of things that you want to get and things that you want to get ready. So some things may not be worth buying extra for just to live in this bag, depending on where you live. If you live in a place that is prone to fire disasters, you may want something that is 100% ready to go, that you can grab at any time and know that you have everything that's basic and necessary for getting along on your own for a little while. So start with just making lists of things that you use regularly every day, because that is slightly different for everyone, and decide what are the things that you are going to have that you can buy that are extra, that are going to live in that bag. And then decide the things that, if you had to evacuate, in descending order, that you would want to take with you. Like, for example, your laptops or something that's easy to grab. And then things like photo albums, if that's, something that people still do. Things that are relatively easy, that mean a lot. If you don't have it in that bag, have the list handy on the bag, so that if you have to go, you can grab that list and you can start moving down, because you're less likely to forget something if you're making that list and you're modifying it constantly beforehand than if you just decide to go and you're like, what do I grab? What do I grab? You're probably going to forget something. Basically, first thing I would put in that's going to be necessary or helpful for any sort of situation: snacks, Cliff Bars, things like that, things that are ready to eat that you can leave in there and occasionally rotate them out. Like, I can only think of a few times when I was really hungry and I didn't want to make anything, and I remembered that I have one of those bars in a bag somewhere. I'll go get it, and then I'll buy a new one and put it in there. That's one way of rotating it, but it's funny how often you will dig into it for things like that. The power goes out, or let's say you come home and somebody hit a utility pole and your power is out and it was unexpected. You may have it just to have snacks for an emergency that you didn't see coming. Other things are, you obviously want some bottled water or two. Might be handy because you may be traveling unexpectedly. Flashlight or two. Honestly, if you get little LED flashlights, have a few of them, because you may have other people that are with you that you may want to be able to give one to. They can also be super helpful if you have a bunch of batteries. If somebody's kid is freaking out in your group, giving them the flashlight sometimes makes them feel better. You want some dishes, like a little mess kit that you can get. You can get these at Army surplus stores or online. Just a little camping kit that you would eat with to, like, even if you go somewhere and there is food, sometimes you don't have all the silverware and stuff. And even if you're just doing the camping version, sometimes that's nice. A knife. I always have, a knife with me, but just having an extra one just in case. It's surprising how often something like that comes in. And it sounds weird, but like garbage bags, it's little things that you don't really think of. Like if you didn't have rain gear, you can make a poncho with garbage bag. You'll find a lot of purposes for it, and it may be something as simple as like maybe you were in a disaster and your car got broken into or something. Being able to just cover a window or something. There's so many weird little things that you won't think of that garbage bags are super useful. And so some of the other things you want to do, think of as a little separate kit. Like, for example, first aid. So this is what most people call a boo-boo kit. Like, it's not, something to treat a gunshot wound or something. You want to have like the usual stuff, the Band-Aids, alcohol wipes, blister covers. So in case you have to walk somewhere, you may not have the best shoes for that. Super useful. Tylenol, aspirin, things like that. And that's the kind of thing that I tend to put in little Tupperware dishes, little food dishes that you can get. You can stack all that stuff inside and then have that as a separate thing. And again, sometimes that's super handy to have. You'll realize you need a Band-Aid, you ran out or you didn't have any, and you'll dig into your kit to get those. Surprising how often that comes up. And then another little Tupperware idea is to have a little hygiene kit, which is things like fingernail clippers and hand sanitizer, soap, wipes, like in lieu of toilet paper, in lieu of being able to take a bath or a shower, you can take a little sanitary wipe shower. And that's another thing that it's individual. So these are the kind of things that you might want to set one up and then think about as you use stuff throughout the day. Things like toothpaste and a toothbrush. Sometimes camping versions of that are useful, but you're going to want to think what you use day to day and think, do I have that in this bag? And if you don't, then you can add it before you need it. And then as far as clothes, obviously you're going to want to have a change of clothes minimum, several changes of things like underwear and socks, because you can wear the same shirt and pants for several days. You don't really want to have to do that with underwear and socks if you don't have to. Having a sleeping bag somewhere near and also on your list, you're obviously probably not going to fit that in your backpack, but have that on your checklist, things that you can grab in case you have to sleep in your car. At the very least, you can be relatively warm. Rain gear if you need it. Jacket probably goes on the list of things to grab. And then what you want to do is put things that you may want to take with you in like a fireproof case or something. All those things that you would be important. Things like deeds to your house, social security cards, insurance documents, everything that is important that you would maybe need to file an insurance claim, things that you want to keep with you if you can. And that's another thing that goes on the checklist to grab, because again, you probably just don't want to just throw that in a backpack. You want to have it in a separate thing that is going to protect it normally day to day, but you put that on the list of things you can grab. Another thing would be, as well as things like bank information, passwords. You obviously don't want to just leave those laying around on a list, because if somebody breaks in your house, you don't want to just give that to people. But having it in some sort of place some sort of case that you can all put together and have it locked would be probably a good idea. An extra prescription bottle for each prescription, not the worst idea, because those you can figure it out with your doctor or with a pharmacist if you need something emergency. At least you can have some proof that you are on that medication, and you may have contact information on there to get an emergency supply if you needed to. Other things would be like for other family members, things like if you have kids, obviously you're going to have, whether they're on formula or specific food, if they have food allergies, that kind of stuff, you want to have stuff that they can snack on. You want also some comfort or busy items, like, God, I don't know what kids do now, but coloring books and things like that. Something, whatever keeps them busy, and the batteries that may be required to do that. Glasses, things medical, anything prescription wise. It's not a bad idea to have, a stash just in case in your kit. But again, that goes on the list of things to grab. Pretty high priority would be prescription items, especially if it's stuff that you need to continue living. Obviously, insulin, things like that. You're going to have to come up with some travel arrangements for that, which may be a problem. And you also want to keep your vehicle in ready to go shape. Like, I tend to put gas in my car when I get to about a half a tank, just in case. Things like cash in hand. In a disaster, there may be power outages, and sometimes having cash will get you something that you need that other people won't have. And then have a plan to reach out to somebody outside the affected area. So you probably have a friend or family member that lives far away. That can work out very good in that situation, because you can make contact with that person saying, I got out, I'm in this city, if anybody needs to get a hold of me, like my cell phone's back on, but being able to get a hold of somebody so that when everybody freaks out and they start texting each other, at least one person will be like, oh, no, I talked to him. I talked to this person, and I talked to this person. I haven't talked to this person yet. So everybody keep an eye out. And then you want to save the other things that people want to prepare. You want to save a lot of that for when you get the basics done. A lot of people think in terms of defensive measures. All of that, again, handle the very basics, especially if you're in a fire-prone area and it's things that you won't have a lot of time to prepare for when you have to leave. You may just have enough time to grab something and go. You're going to want a more complete kit than if you live somewhere like I do. Most of the disasters that are going to befall this area most likely are stuff that you're not going to be able to run from. If that giant earthquake hits, you're probably going to have to figure out a way to hunker down somewhere. Hopefully your building is undamaged, or somebody that lives relatively close that you can get to, and just stay where you are, which in that case, it may be handy to have things like a couple boxes of MREs or things that will just get you through a couple weeks. But I wanted to keep this kind of basic for if you've never done something like this, to at least encourage people to think about it a little bit. Even if you live in a place that doesn't have giant regional disasters, everybody faces either cold or hot or drought or power outages, things like that, you can at least come up with a mini kit. And even if you don't want to make an actual one, first aid kits are always handy to have around. Hygiene kits are also handy. You can make these smaller little versions that can live in a specific place that you can throw in a bag if you need to go somewhere. But these are all very simple. You can find more complete lists on things like FEMA's website, but if you search disaster checklist, you can find things that are more of a stay-at-home kit versus a grab-and-go. But I would highly encourage to have just the basic, even if it's a stay-home version of like a 3-day emergency kit. Start to think about things like that, because I think recently the government has shown its hand at not being interested. Cutting the funding for disaster relations, and maybe you're in a blue area where the government doesn't want to help you. But regardless, it's worth it to have, and it's a good idea for everybody. So this was a basic run through. Maybe I'll do a more specific list or something else. Maybe I'll do a more specific list later, but I want to keep all this very beginner oriented, because I think, especially with people on the left, there's a lot of people on the right that have been doing this stuff for years and getting ready for crazy stuff when daily disasters are happening, when you have, regional disasters that happen every year and fire disasters, things that have happened more and more recently. So start to make plans, put together a basic kit. Worst case is you might have snacks if the power goes out. I'll see you in the next one.